Well, our property is 240 hectares. It's just south of Te Puke in the Bay of Plenty. It's an area that grows very good trees, has a good climate, mild winters and a reliable rainfall. We bought the property 47 years ago, and it was a lands and survey development block, and their policy was to cut every tree down and make every blade of grass work, which led to quite a severe erosion problem when we took the block over, and that's where we started planting trees. Well, our initial plantings were for erosion, and the stream bed came in, riparian planting. And after a wee while we suddenly realised we quite like trees, and we sort of started looking around for different things, and somewhere along the line we got a couple of hundred redwood trees from Rotorua, from FRI in those days, and popped these in. This was just a corner of a paddock that had been planted into barley, and it was just an ugly little corner. So we popped these in, and these are now coming up to 40 years old.
I think I was pregnant with our third child when we planted these.
Yeah.
And you actually never realise how it's all going to end up when you start planting. There's all sorts of benefits come from doing this sort of thing with very little effort and very little cost. We've got such wonderful benefits from these redwoods. People staying here and camping and picnicking, and children love them. They've got little mountain bike trails down through the middle, and it gives you a sense of security, these lovely big redwoods.
My father, who was a builder, he thought the kids needed a hut on the farm, so he built this hut. Now when he built it, the redwoods were smaller than the hut and it looked pretty ridiculous, but of course now it's just tremendous, and there's so many children now have stayed in the redwood hut. We've had magnificent barbecues and that, it's just been great. So yeah, you start looking at alternative species, and then from there we started looking, our soils are all kaharoa ash, what is known as kaharoa ash, or it's a volcanic ash, very light pumice soil which when exposed just washes away. And our land is made up of nice flat valleys and short steep sidelings with good flat tops. So to put cattle on these big sidelings, they were just knocking them around. So then we decided, well, you know, some of these sidelings and that we could perhaps put into trees. So we started planting up blocks of trees. A lot of the people that came into the blocks with us at the same time were much older than us. They were returned servicemen, and they gave us quite a hard time when we started planting trees. However, during the 90s when we started harvesting these trees, those same people said, oh by gosh, you're lucky to have your trees, aren't you? That's when stock prices were quite low and things weren't so brilliant in farming. So we have been lucky, but then over the years we've just planted blocks that we could handle as a family. So we sometimes 1 hectare, sometimes 5 hectares of a maximum, and it's just been so good to us. So since probably the late 80s right through till now, we've been in a position to harvest trees right through, and that's been good. And the beauty of trees is, of course, that when the price drops off a bit, you can leave them there. You don't have to pay storage or freight or anything, and they just sit there and continue growing. So we did have quite a gap sort of between 2000 and perhaps 2008, 2009, where we didn't harvest any trees. So the last block of trees we harvested were 32 years old, and they were very good. We struck the high prices and it was very good. The best we've harvested was a block just across from here. We netted 58,000 a hectare for that. That was the very best. They were 8-metre pruned, and they were good. But we've been somewhere between sort of 45,000 a hectare, and we'd averaged I think $42,000 a hectare for the plantings up till recently. And while we've been talking about high prices over the last 3 or 4 years, we've only been averaging around about 32,000 a hectare for that. But that's still very good money, and compare that with dry stock farming on some of the steeper hills, there's just no comparison. But you do have to wait that initial 25 years.
And we were getting those prices because they were well pruned and well thinned, and when you get that price, it makes it worthwhile planting 1 or 2 hectares.
Yeah.
A logger will come in and do that because they're good high quality trees and timber. Also the 3 children were all into pruning for pocket money, and that taught good work ethics, that they'd come up and they'd prune all these trees. No, so a lot of it was just small blocks each year, and it worked so well for us.
We have been fortunate here in the bay in the fact that we have got several good outlets. We're surrounded by several good mills between Taupo, Patauru, Rotorua, and also we have got the port at the mount. But I must emphasise that if you're only going to plant small blocks, the access has to be good and the quality of the trees has to be good. So a hectare of trees right out the back of the farm with no roading to it is probably not such a good idea. But the first hectare we harvested, it was actually only half a hectare. It was right beside the road out in the front paddock, and we netted $21,000 for that half a hectare. Yeah, so we didn't actually have to reduce our stock numbers by very much because some of the seedlings we're taking out weren't producing very much anyway, and the damage to them from cattle was pretty bad. However, we did get very involved with the deer industry at the start. I'd been very involved with hunting, and so we were right at the start of the deer industry when prices were very good, and at that stage of the game we were making plenty of money out of the deer, so we were prepared to take out complete paddocks, whereas up till then we would take out a siding or a corner or something like that. So once the deer prices came in, we could take out quite a big paddock and plant it in trees, and that was very good. And deer were very good to us, but however, because of our light soils, deer just were damaging our country too much, and we eventually saw 2 or 3 boom and busts and we got out of the deer. And by the time we dropped out of the deer, we were in a position we could start harvesting trees. So, but just to keep pouring fertiliser onto some of our seedlings just seemed to be crazy to me when it was all just being washed down into the valley bottoms anyway. But we started off with sheep and beef. We went into the deer in quite a major way, and then over the last probably 10 years we've phased the sheep out completely, and we were doing dairy grazing, which was very good to us, and then just over the last 4 or 5 years we've leased the farm out to a dairy farmer next door. Following on from planting up the erosion areas and then some of the steeper hillsides, we took out some quite bigger areas out through here. This is the back of the farm, and we just looked at our hillsides and thought they're not producing much, let's plant them in trees. So the block we were looking at in front of us here, there are 3 blocks covering about 12 hectares. They were split into 3 age groups, 25, 26 and 27. We started harvesting last year, about not this summer, the summer before, and those blocks netted us $30,000 in our pocket at the end per hectare. We would have normally gone and spread that over 3 years just because of tax purposes and everything, but the prices were so good we just jumped in and did it, so it was still spread over 2 years because our balance date was June, and we wanted to get it done. But it was good, just good. Something like $300 and something thousand came in off those 2 blocks, and there's no way we could have ever done that with livestock off those blocks at all. Immediately we'd finished harvesting. We finished harvesting in August last year, and we went straight in and started planting straight away. So as the boys were still harvesting down here, the planters were coming in behind them. We've had a phenomenal year for growth, and these trees are just 12 months old now, and they're well away. But we again emphasise the fact that the flats, we either keep them out for stock, hay, silage, or in the case here, maize, just whatever. But we just feel the flats are just too valuable for trees at this stage. And also the trees just don't seem to do quite so well. Pine trees don't do quite so well on the flat. They certainly grow well, but they become very gross and heavy branched. So we stick to our seedlings. So we have stuck in these blocks with pine trees, but then you come around to here, behind there are some blackwoods. They're doing very well. And then the block behind me again is cypress. Now our main species are pines, but following on from the pines, we do like the cypress. We think there's a good future in those. Cypress being either macrocarpa, lusitanica, or in this case, C.ovensii. Macrocarpa is just about out because of the canker. It's sort of gone out of favour. Lusitanicas are good, and And this C.ovensii here is a relatively new species of the cypress, and we just like them. Our oldest ones we've got are down in the valley. They're 14, 15, coming up to 18 years old, and they look good. We have seen some of the wood sawn, and it looks to have a lot of promise. Following on from that, I guess the next species we really like is either the some of the eucalypts. Probably our most favourite one would be the redwoods though. But yeah, the eucalypts are sort of a hit and miss. And the one that we really like, looks like doing well, is Eucalyptus globordea or Eucalyptus pilularis. Now they are sort of semi-frost tender. They've done very well. We have seen some very big trees being harvested, and yeah, it's a good one. Thing with all the alternative species and the different small blocks is we've had tremendous support, and we've been very involved with Farm Forestry Association throughout New Zealand, and that's just been so good, and there's just such tremendous amount of knowledge amongst those farm foresters scattered throughout every branch in the country, and particularly with alternative species. So get away from your pine trees and you start looking at your blackwoods and your eucalypts, redwoods and those cypress, and yeah, every district's got their experts. Initially when we started planting, we basically did all the planting ourselves, so hence the smaller blocks, and then we started and we did all our own pruning. So you can see that as the years gone by, the first 2 or 3 blocks we harvested were all 8 metre pruned, but then as you get a bit older, you don't like the height so much, you start coming down. But what's interesting is once we got into the position of starting to harvest and the bigger paddocks, then we started bringing in planters, commercial planters and commercial pruners. I still enjoy pruning. Pruning's a good job, but yeah, I'm reluctant from the big high ladders now. I sort of stick to the lower pruning. And I mean, those bigger blocks like that, yeah, you want professional guys, and you can work away there for days and days on your own, but then you see the pruners come in and they just go through like locusts. With cypress, it's a little bit different, and yeah, we found with cypress that a little and often is much better. Keep the branches small and keep them tight for those initial years. But yeah, there are a lot more branches and it's a bit more expensive, and really we haven't really proved ourselves with the cypress yet. We know we can grow pines, the research, the data's there, we know we can grow them, we know we can sell them. With the alternative species, you've got to get a specialised someone in to come in and cut them, and a specialised mill to do it properly. It is a different setup, but I still think there's a tremendous future in the alternative species. Yes, the hill opposite us here, that's the type of country it is. You can see we've got a flat valley, you've got big flat tops on the top, and you short steep sidelings. No problem for logging. All the logging so far has been done with ground-based machines, and that hill behind us there, or that where we're looking at, is destined for trees this following winter.
It's actually hard to imagine when you're planting that you're actually going to see it being logged, but it's surprising how fast those years go from planting to harvesting. So don't let the time span put you off planting a small block of trees. You'd be surprised how quickly those years go by.
So trees have been very good to us financially, aesthetically and also socially.